No worries. There we are.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to yet another Sports Community live stream from Loxdown, Melbourne. I'm really pleased to be joined by Michael Peacock from Heidelberg Football Club. Michael, welcome to the Sports Community live stream.
Really pleased to be on board. Looking forward to a good conversation. Should be terrific.
Yeah, well, and for those that know me, know that I'm very happy to talk to anyone whose club looks and dresses in the black and yellow. But as you're saying, your club was formed before Richmond Football Club, so they actually wear your colours, not the other way around.
Yeah, we like that thought. We like it.
Well, it's iconic colours. So the Heidelberg Football Club, before we talk about women's football and expanding on our weekly Wednesday series of doing sport differently, when did you invite netball into the fray?
Netball has been. We ventured into netball initially about 4 years ago, and it's been a little bit of a struggle. And the struggle has been a lot to do with it's been harder to have our netballers connected to the club in the same way that our footballers are connected to the club.
Yes.
Because they play, and it's a little bit of the nature of some of those sports. Netball, they play in a stadiums on a Friday night, and they're in the northern, they're generally out at in Bundoora or further afield, and they train in stadiums elsewhere as well. So it's the connection to the clubs has been a bit harder, but we're now starting to get a bit of crossover with our women's footy and our netball. So it's taking longer to have it be an integral part of the club compared to how quickly it worked with women's footy. But I think our learning from that is helping us.
Well, so when talking of the women's football, when did they play their first year? So when did you get the team up and running?
So 2019 was their first season. I'd been on the committee and secretary for 6 years, and we had anticipated that we would always have a women's team. In that time, we discussed it, and we were looking at the false thought, I suppose, that we needed to have our juniors have their girls come through for us to then have a women's team. And so we looked at the numbers and had anticipated that this year would probably be the first year. And then at the end of 2018, we went, hang on, there's 3 or 4 girls playing in youth, girls finishing their juniors, whose dads are life members of the footy club, the yellow and black. We wouldn't really like to see them running around in another jumper somewhere else. So we thought, look, we'll pull the trigger and we'll go. And so we probably October 2018, we just said, righto, we're in women's footy, and it's going to be great, and we're just going to go really hard. And so we before the first practice match in the pre-season in 2019, we had 32 or 33 players. 5 of them had any previous football experience.
Yeah,
maybe 6, and it was fantastic.
Well, it's funny, and to those that are watching live on the live stream today, good morning to you. You can join in the conversation at any stage just by typing your comment into the post that you're watching, and that'll come up, and we'll bring you into the conversation. So even if it's just to say good morning, welcome, and hope you enjoy the discussion. It's interesting, the theme that's come through. We had a coach from Shepparton United women's football team come on a couple of weeks ago, and their impetus was exactly the same things. Established life members or iconic people within the club going, hey, my daughter's not going to go and play in some other club colours. We better do something about this. So it's funny how that tribalism is alive and well. So when you put the word out, like, what was the response? Was it the junior girls? Was it the mums? Who made up that 34?
It was really interesting. We had girls we had a few girls who lived locally who thought, footy, let's go and have a look. and then they brought their friends. We had, as I said, we had four players come out of our youth girls team that had finished in under 18s. And then we had just a whole range of people who'd never played footy, never really even thought about it, and then came and had a look. And as a result, we drew players. And look, a lot live within the geographic patch, which is really useful, and that's sort of normally footy clubs you draw in your local community. So it meant that there was somewhere that people could go, and I think it probably helped that, like, we didn't have 34 with the click of a finger. We, through the pre-season, and we sort of lucked into a really good coach, and so through the pre-season, the word spread that it was really good fun, and the objectives were to essentially to learn the game, to love the game, and to get better, and enjoy being connected and belonging. And that it probably couldn't have worked any better for us in our first season.
Just joining us is that coach of that Shepparton United team, Dean Walton. Dean, welcome to you. Thanks, another Tiger man joining the conversation. So, Dean, I couldn't help but notice again another similar theme coming through with women's sport, all the way across women's sport, particularly across the different sports, is that concept of fun, Michael. That seems to be a really interesting difference between traditional boys and men's culture, if you like, and the girls and the women's. Is there's a very much a stronger emphasis on fun, it seems.
Yeah, I think it was, and we were quite pointed about it, because not that I'm likening our senior women's to under 10s footy, but there are some elements around it that are similar, and that is that if you haven't really learnt the game, if you were absolutely rigorous and hard and tough with under 10s, they're not going to enjoy the game. They're not going to play in under 11s.
Yeah.
So in part, our coach took a really structured approach, said, look, well, I'm not going to play everybody all over the place. I'm going to let you be really comfortable and confident playing in an area of the ground where you can work out what you need to do there, and that will help you then be successful. And then further down the track, that'll develop and evolve. And that worked. It worked exceptionally well, but it was probably as much as any, or probably more than the on-field, it was the way the off-field worked.
Yeah.
That was really the impetus for why it was such a great. And 2020, pre-COVID, we actually had two teams.
Yeah.
So we'd gone from nothing. We'd gone from nothing to fielding two teams in 2020 off the back of a really highly integrated key part of our club, that was the bit that was most rewarding. Like, the on-field was great because you want to be successful, and they were pretty successful. But the fact that we then attracted more and more, I think really helped.
Yeah, and I would like to explore the benefits off-field in just a moment, but I just want to go back before I pick up on Dean's point about maybe a Shep United Heidelberg under-18s girls exhibition, country versus cities, sponsored by sports community. Gosh, the whole family of entrepreneurs, Dean. Sounds like a good idea, though. We might have to talk about that. But I just want to explore just for a moment the reality of a whole group of people coming to a club that they probably don't know really well to play a sport that they have never really experienced before. How were they feeling? Were they nervous? Were they scared? What was that emotion that you had to overcome, I guess, to get them to come back, to bring their friends back?
Yeah, look, I think it was interesting. So a few of the things that we did, the pre-season, just because of the way facilities are in demand with cricket and everything else that's going on, our girls weren't training with our men's team. But as we moved towards the season proper, so there was a bit of trepidation about feeling like they belonged in the joint, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So as we progressed towards the season proper, and we started to then change our training timetable, what would be our normal season training, we made sure that, like, our Thursday nights it was a bit squashy on the one ground, but we had 19s men's, reserves men's, senior men's and senior women's all training on a Thursday night on the one ground, and then everybody into the rooms for dinner and selection. So straight away, it was a really conscious decision to say we got 4 teams now, not 3, and everybody's part of our club. And so the girls, I say the girls, but the women's team, the girls would come in. They were on, like everybody else, en masse in the rooms, and got their piece of turf. And we did a few little things that I think probably helped. So in terms of that connection and belonging and having people be comfortable. So, like, pre-round 1 jumper presentation, rather than just throwing their jumpers in the rooms on the Saturday before the game, there's a staggered start with men's and women's footy. So the women started a week earlier. So we ran the Thursday night dinner when everyone came into the rooms. All the women's jumpers were on coat hangers hanging from the ceiling, and there were 4 that were separate. So they were the girls of the life members, the daughters of the life members. So they got to present their daughters with their jumpers. But then we got all of the senior blokes to get up with corresponding numbers and give the senior women their jumper. Yeah. So they were things that said, we're all part of the one footy club.
Well, it's interesting comparing and contrasting how many clubs have brought in the women's teams. And let's go broader than football. We've got the traditional teams of a club, and then we're bolting on, for want of better terminology, new teams. And so often we see that the new teams just have to find a spot somewhere. Yeah, so it's the Sunday night, or it's the worst time for the worst, and it's the worst time for a reason. It's not convenient. It's not. But you've gone the other way. You've just made all things. You've just got teams. All your teams are considered equal within the club.
Yeah, and it was. I do a lot of work professionally around organisational culture, and so we're really mindful of that. You need to actively establish the culture that you want, rather than hoping it turns out like you want it to.
Yes.
So we quite intentionally did things where, working with the Northern Footy League and the clubs that we were drawn to play, our first 2 games of this, often women's footy is normally scheduled on a Sunday, but the first 2 rounds of the season last year was still daylight savings. So we moved our 19s, reserves and senior men's back an hour and played our senior women's straight after the senior men's. So, and one of those was an Anzac Day game, standalone Anzac Day game. So our senior women got to do the same thing as our senior blokes do on Anzac Day, commemorative service. And it was, we're really conscious. You use the term bolted on. There's a lot of clubs that our girls played against. The women use separate grounds, separate social rooms, separate facilities, operate as an independent club, whereas if it's bolted on, because some people do it because they think they'll get better facilities if we've got women's, or they think we should because there's, we want our footy club to look like our community.
Yes.
So historically it's been highly successful, but didn't always look like the rest of the community. Now it does. And we were really conscious about doing that. And it's a much more, it's a really welcoming and inviting place. So our vice president of our footy club, one of our captains of our women's team, coaches our under 13 girls.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. I'm always interested as new teams come into clubs, how the traditional teams react and respond. So how did the men's team that's been the spotlight since 1878 kind of been the focus? 1878, do I get that right?
76, yeah. Oh, look, I think it was interesting. I think it was the trepidation was a bit from all quarters because it was unknown, it was new. So some of our supporters sitting on the deck who've only ever been and watched blokes footy, to hear them going, "Oh, have a look at that Emma Rose. She's a jet. Oh, far out. How good's she from the pocket?" They were vested, and it didn't really. It really didn't take long for our blokes teams to just deal with this. This is what the club looks like.
Yeah.
It was, and it helps the fact that you go from having 70 people in your rooms on a Thursday night to having 110 people in your rooms on a Thursday night and the joints jumping.
Yeah.
Socially, it was really, every aspect was really solid.
Yeah. So let's talk about the off-field now. What was what has been those benefits apart from more numbers in the social, et cetera, et cetera? What else? What's been the benefit that it's brought to the club that's starting to snowball, that you're growing now the women's side very quickly?
I think the one factor for me, as I observed the way that things developed last year, that really stood out is that I suppose it's the investment of people in their footy club.
Yeah.
So whereas previously, again, none of it's good or bad, but previously the probably historically the blokes playing group expected that people would do things.
Yep. Yeah, that's
just because that was their learned normal.
Yes.
And our women's team didn't know anything different. So they didn't expect people would do things. They got in and did things. And then that starts to rub off. So others get in and do things. So it's just tweaked our normal underlying culture to one that's more inclusive and engaging and involving of all, whereas it was inclusive and engaging of some.
Well, and in our experience across working with clubs and observing clubs across the country, across sports, the clubs that have got the longest periods of sustained success are those where you've got everybody contributing to the goals of the club. And I'm talking about off field, not on field, like the players will play and that's there. But those, when you look under the covers of really successful clubs that achieve their goals over a long period of time, the players and their supporters are all contributing in lots of different non-sporting ways. Compare that to the inverse, which is the committee does all the work type scenario. And I think that's what you're finding as well.
Yeah, and we've been able to broaden. I mean, it's interesting. Our committee I describe it's changed quite considerably because there's a much greater, there's a pretty a sound gender balance now that historically wasn't there. And again, it's not surprising that it wasn't there because it was a club that was predominantly blokes playing footy.
Yeah.
So the committee now has a really sound gender balance. So it's just so again, it brings that normalised practice that we look like the rest of the community, and people get involved and contribute. So it's it's been the difference that it's made to the place, I think, has been really significant and just exciting because it's the first home and away game they won against was unknown what the quality was going to be like, and so we happened to be a pretty reasonable side. So we were the only first-year team graded into the second division, and we ended up playing in the grand final in the second division of the Northern Women's Footy League, and it was immense. So that success also then helped.
Yeah,
because it was a bit infectious, and we sort of, we joked, there's that Heidelberg have been a highly successful club, over many, many years, and so now it was, well, we want to do the same with women's footy. Why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
So there was a bit of swagger.
Well, and I think a club is enjoying their times when the words that they're using is exciting. I think exciting is almost the ultimate level of where a club's functioning really well, and a lot of that excitement. And again, it's much for us. We look much broader than on-field success, but it's exciting off-field. But you're talking about large numbers coming to the social events, coming to the Thursday night. You're staying, you're watching each other. I mean, that's just an exciting environment to be part of.
Oh, my daughter played under 18 youth girls last year. So the last game that she played was the premiership that they won, which was magnificent. Through the season, particularly in the finals, our senior women's would turn up and watch the youth girls play, and it was just that everyone's up and about.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, when our blokes we won the 2016 men's and seniors and reserves premiership, and everyone was up and about. So the fact that we've now got a women's team and we get everyone up and about when a women's team is striving for success as well, it's that whole, as I said, whole thing is we look like the community, which is, it's great.
And just picking up on Dean's point, we still need to educate some of our people on full inclusion. So have you got people that are still a little bit resistant? And again, maybe resistance not the right terminology, because that'd be a bit negative, but traditionalists that kind of think that shouldn't be going down this path?
I thought we would have, but we didn't.
Yeah.
Because people just engaged really well, and the inadvertent things are the things to work on. So there's one example that I've used that it's a really minor little thing, but when we were talking about, well, I said our first Saturday of footy in 2019 had 19s, then reserves men's, senior women's, and the commentary from people in the rooms was, are we going to play the main game earlier? Meaning the senior men's game.
Yeah, yes.
Because historically it's always been the main game.
Yeah.
And from a revenue and from it's still the biggest show in town at the club. But what we did is we changed the language.
Yeah.
So we don't use the term main game. We talk about what we're doing. And so we played with it. What we're doing is we're playing our 19s men, our 19s, then our reserves men's, senior women's. No mention of main game. There's 4 games of footy, and each game is as important as each other game. So yeah, there was no overt resistance. There was just some having people get comfortable with stuff.
Yeah, and language is very, very, very important, and we're learning that as we go through this Doing Sport Differently series. The future. What does it look like? Do you think that this is going to be the impetus for not just more players, but women going into coaching side, more women going into more volunteering roles, more women coming into the committee roles and senior executive roles within the committee? Do you see it as being a platform for that?
Yeah, look, we're already getting, as I said, we've got a committee for the last couple of years. Our vice presidents have been women. We've got just about gender balance on our committee, which I think is really sound. I think the next exciting part will be, where do the coaches come from?
Yeah.
And I think it makes good logical sense that there are not many women's coaches coaching footy as a proportion compared to blokes coaching footy, just because women's footy is relatively new.
Yeah.
I think within our current senior women's playing group, I would think there are probably 4 or 5 people who if they're not involved now in coaching juniors, which some of them are, which is unreal. I noticed Ash Riley, our vice president and captain, commented there. Gave me a bit of a rap too. Thanks, Ash. I think the thing that's going to be really exciting is when there's the development of coaches women's coaches to coach women's footy, I think will be is the progression that's going to be a really exciting one.
Yeah, and I can see that progression. I mean, I'll just pick up on a little bit of language there. I think women's coaches coaching footy, and so
yeah.
Going through probably one of the best places to learn will be assistant coach of some of the men's teams, and getting access to the tactics and the thinking that and purely from an advancement point of view, that one sport's been going for 150 years and another's been going for one, or a couple, 3 or 4. So that's really, really cool. So look, again, I say this every week, Michael. I could talk to you for hours about what you've done, what your club's done. Sorry, and before I just hand over to you for a couple of tips for clubs going down this path. In another life with hair and 3 daughters, or at least 2 of them anyway. I was the CEO of the local footy league here, and it had 3 leagues, if you like. 2 didn't have netball and 1 did have netball. And so each week I would go, and it's not really the sport. Let me rephrase that. 2 didn't have participation options for women and 1 did. And for each week I would go to 1 game and stay there for the whole lot, and maybe 5-6 hours afterwards, depending on the quality of the social side of the club. And I'd go, but from one game to 1 league, and bounce from league to league to league. And it dawned on me after about a year and a bit of doing this that it didn't matter which club and which league or whatever, the clubs that had participation options for women as integrated into part of their club culture and talking about the equality, they were just better clubs. They were better places to be. They were just more enjoyable. They were more successful based on their own definition of success, on and off field, on and off court. They were just better. And so we, this is in 2008, put into the strategic plan netball into the other 2 competitions. The traditionalists went berserk. And now a decade later, they think it's the greatest thing that's come, platform to then start the women's football, and that's exploded as well. But it's not about the football or netball. It's about creating participation options within your club for different groups within the community. So that's what you've illustrated so wonderfully well. So I thank you for sharing the story. And Andrew, I'll copy you and Michael in, and you can continue to chat, because I've been struck by how similar the thinkings of 2 people heavily involved in women's football have been, city and country. So if you like, I will connect you up outside of this session. So Michael, thank you very much for being part of the discussion today.
Been a pleasure. And if I was going to give anyone any pearls of wisdom, it would be that, it's got to be, you've got to be all in, and it's got to be with the purpose of a fully integrated, better club.
And not just bolting it on.
If it's bolted on, you're going to be in strife. Won't work. Whereas integrated, and so everyone's in the footy club or netball club up to their eyeballs, then it's not a bad place to be.
And if you're wearing yellow and black, I can imagine it's a magnificent place to be. So before the comments come through, I will say, Michael, again, thank you very much. To Dean, thank you again for joining us. Ashley, your comments and giving a public wrap to Michael's fantastic. Wendy, welcome to you. So, Michael, we've gone to the city of Mandurah in WA. There are a couple of people kind of breaking the quarantine over there. But other than that, you're going beautifully in WA, Wendy. So until tomorrow, where I've got no idea what we're talking about, but we will work it out. And then Esport Friday. I'm Steve Pallas, Michael Peacock. Thank you so much for being part of our sports community.
See you later.